In this world that we live in, getting rich is actually a lot easier than most people think. And oftentimes, those who are poor know that there's something that the rich know that they don't know. And if this is exactly what you were thinking, then you're right. Because in almost every example, somebody who is rich is not fundamentally different than somebody who is poor. You see, we all fall into the same temptations to buy stupid things, and we all give in to our emotions at times. And we spend money on stupid things, or we procrastinate and we don't work on the things that we need to work on. But you guys would be amazed at how fast your life can change just by knowing some of the secrets of the rich, such as 5 things that poor people do that rich people don't. Because if you don't even know that you're making a mistake, how could you ever hope to fix it? Number 1, the wrong job. Most of you watching right now most likely work a job that you hate, and it's not your fault. You see, everything is structured in a way for those at the top to become wealthier while those at the bottom become poorer. And the problem is that most people stay at the wrong job for way too long, and by the time they realize it, it's simply too late. You see, something like 10 years ago, I actually learned the truth. And what I learned is that to get rich, you have to unplug, and you have to realize that there is a better way. You see, growing up, most people work a job that they just barely get by. And if everyone else is doing this, then it starts to seem normal. See, most people will just follow the herd. Most people will simply follow what everyone else is doing, even if that means working a job that they hate for 40 years, just so they can finally retire with just enough money to live life a little bit at the ripe old age of 60. But in the age of the internet, things are changing, and more people are beginning to realize that there is a better way. You see, more people are starting to realize that a typical job is really nothing more than a dead end. A typical job is no different than a legal form of slavery. In fact, in many cases and in many countries around the world, the typical job that the typical person works is actually encouraged. You see, when I was younger, my parents always told me that I needed to go and get a job. They never told me that I needed to go out there and build a business to actually get rich. One of the things that poor people do that the rich don't is continue to work a job that they hate, even though they know that that job is a dead end. Number 2, time. For many people, time is sort of a touchy subject because time is the one thing that we cannot get more of. And so if you're somebody who has spent most of your time doing the wrong things, obviously time can be a little bit of a sensitive subject. Now, for most people, time is something that you're most likely wasting if you're not rich. You see, one of the major things that separates the rich from the poor is simply how they use or how they allocate their time. Because if you cannot use your time effectively, I can guarantee you that you will never become rich. It's really as simple as that. If you look at most people who are poor, what they're doing is they're spending 90% of their time outside of work doing things that will not produce them an income, or doing things that are not providing value to other people. What you guys have to understand is that rich people, especially in the beginning while they are building their wealth, are utterly ruthless when it comes to their time. The way I like to look at this is that during every minute of every day, you are either doing something that is going to bring you closer to your goals, or you are not. You're either producing or you're consuming. What you have to understand is that consumers tend to be people who are poor, while producers tend to be people who are rich. See, those who are constantly producing things for other people, whether it's products or services, those are the people who are most likely to become rich. Somebody who dies poor is simply somebody who did not use their time effectively over and over again until they eventually passed away. Now, me personally, even when I'm taking a break from work or resting, most of the time, I'm actually using that time to consume content that will either educate me or inspire me so that getting rich will come even more easily to me. Because if you want to get rich, you have to be absolutely ruthless with your time and with the way that you spend it. You see, rich people and poor people are not fundamentally different as people. They just simply do things a little bit differently than everybody else. And one of these things is how they manage their time. Number 3, if you look at any person who is insanely rich, most of the time they have a very important trait, and this trait is a little something called perseverance. What you have to understand is that both people who are poor and people who are rich get ideas for businesses and things like that all the time. But the difference is that poor people will get an idea, or they will create a goal, and then shortly after they will give up. Whereas rich people will create a goal, or they'll have an idea, they will actually follow through on these things. What you guys have to realize is that success and wealth creation are not a linear process. What does this mean? It means that success in most cases is exponential, which means that there's something called a tipping point. It means that typically you have to go for a while getting very little to no results, and then eventually you'll strike gold, or eventually you'll hit what we call the tipping point. You see, in the beginning, I'm gonna have to be posting all kinds of videos to this channel, getting minimal results. But if I give up before it hits the tipping point, then all this work that I will have done will be completely useless. So I have to follow through, and I have to keep going. So the thing about poor people is that poor people tend to start businesses and they try ways to make money all the time. But the thing that truly separates them from the rich, or the thing that separates them from achieving great wealth and success, is really nothing more than a lack of follow through. You see, I personally probably come up with at least one idea every single day that has the potential to make $1 million if implemented correctly. And many people who are currently poor have imagined $1 million ideas. But so what's the problem then? Why are they not rich? The problem is that they simply didn't follow through. You see, when you have an idea, when you create a plan, and when you execute on that plan, you absolutely have to follow through. And most likely, you're gonna have to work on an idea for many months while seeing very little to almost no results. But as long as you follow through, just keep in mind that you will eventually make it. Depending on the idea that you have and the variables beyond your control, the amount of time that you're gonna need to continue going hard with it is gonna vary. But eventually, as long as you do what every other poor person fails to do, you will get different results. And as long as you stop doing the same things that poor people do, you will stop getting the same results that poor people tend to get. Number 4, not too long ago, I heard a guy talking about getting rich and he compared it to an airplane. And what he said was that the only way for an airplane to actually lift off and to break through the gravity that's holding it down is with a monumental amount of speed. And in case you didn't know, speed and momentum are actually the same exact thing. And anybody who has accumulated great wealth will tell you that without speed or without momentum, you're really not going to get anywhere. If you look at a car, the largest amount of gasoline is actually burned up during their first few moments of taking off from a complete stop. And when it comes to generating wealth and success for yourself, it's really no different. You see, gravity, or the force that holds us back, is always the greatest during takeoff or during the initial push. And this is precisely the time when the most effort and the most willpower is needed to get yourself going. But if you hang in there and if you create enough momentum right from the start, eventually the momentum will become so powerful that it will simply carry you. You see, rich and successful people do things differently from the poor because they create positive momentum in all areas of their life. If you start going to the gym and you work out, you look better, so you feel better. And when you feel better, you naturally want to do better. And what happens is this all becomes a powerful feedback loop, or a powerful loop of momentum where you've essentially turned your entire life into one giant positive domino loop, with one good domino falling and hitting the next and hitting the next, and so on and so forth. Always remember that the greatest effort is always required at the beginning of any business that you start, or at the beginning of any journey that you embark on to make money, and the amount of momentum that you create during that first initial push will in large part determine how easy it is for you to continue going after you get past that initial push. And so rich people understand the true importance of generating a large amount of momentum right from the very start. Number 5, if you were to ask somebody who is poor if they want to be rich, most will say yes. But then if you ask them, how then are you going to get there? Most of them will say, well, I don't know. One of the major things that poor people do that rich people don't is failing to create a clear plan. Let me give you an example. A while back, I told myself that I wanted to have 5 YouTube channels, all making at least $10,000 per month. And since I've already created channels that make $10,000 per month, I already know roughly what is needed to achieve this goal. And what you guys have to understand is that rich people are very specific with their goals. And so what they do is they create very detailed plans that allow them to achieve these goals. It's not enough to just simply say, I want to be rich. You have to be more specific than that. You see, my goal was to create 5 YouTube channels and have them all making $10,000 per month. And I know that to do that from personal experience, I'm gonna need at least 100 really good videos on each channel. But so then I break it down a little bit further and I say, well, how many videos can I make per day? And then by understanding how many videos I can make per day or how much output I have, I can actually calculate roughly how long it will take me to get from where I am now to where I want to be. You see, most people think success is really complicated, but success is really just figuring out some way to make a lot of money and then repeating that thing over and over and over again. These are 5 things that poor people do that rich people don't. And with that said, my name's Julian, and until next time, thank you guys so much for watching.